Happy Friday. So today we're going to answer the question, what size screen should I put in my granulator? So what we typically see is this varying greatly when you're not using a shredder and a turbo or a delamination mill. When you're just doing granulator straight into an Airtable, that's when you're gonna have a larger amount of changes in your screens. So I was gonna put, I'm gonna put something on the board here real quick. So typically we'll do a 1/16 screen, which comes out, I got a little chart here, 1/16 is about 1.5 millimeters, so probably closer to a 2 millimeter screen. And it depends because some of the equipment that we have is metric, some of it is, but we've been using this kind of unit of measure, but really it translates into metric. So a 1/16 inch is what you'll be using for like telco or low grade wire, and then 1/8, and then 3/16. There we go. So this here would be your Romex screen. This here would be your THHN screen. And I gotta put the little R there. An R. All right, so registered trademarks. Okay, anyway, so this here telco, so Cat 5, Cat 6. Sorry if this is kind of like a big mess, but you would use this first screen here, 1/16. So this is if you're going from a granulator right into an air separating table and you want to get the best separation. You're going to use a 1/8 or 1/16 screen, which translates to about 2 millimeters. And then it's actually like 1.6 millimeters, but that's what we got to work with. Now, if you are using a turbo, then these kind of don't matter as much. And the reason is this: you want your material to be just big enough so that when it's going through the turbo is not struggling to process it. So you would have your shredder breaks it down a little bit, then in your granulator breaks it down further, and then your turbo does the finishing work. So you can do 3/16 or 3/8 or 5/16, any one of these to go into the turbo if you were. Before the turbo, depending on how properly sized your granulator is for your turbo. So these two here would be this is the range you want to be in if you're going to a turbo. If you're not, then each category you kind of have to keep everything separate. Now, here's something interesting. If you use the 3/16 screen for Romex, you can go ahead and run your material through this and use THHN to go in here. However, if you don't have a turbo and you're using a 1/8 screen or you're using a 3/16 screen for your THHN, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get some long strands of THHN that go through this screen, and you might end up damming up your Airtable screen. And the flip side is that if you try to run your Romex through the 1/8, that Romex, especially if you're doing larger Romex, you're going to have smaller. Those pieces are trying to get small to fall through the screen, and when you do that, you're creating heat. You're creating a lot of copper dust because that Romex doesn't just want to fall through the 1/8, and it's taking a lot longer for that material to fall through. So the sweet spot is to do THHN by itself with the 1/8 and 3/16 with the Romex. If you do them both together, it's probably better to do them in the 3/16 screen. Okay, so what we just discussed here was for mostly wire, right? We talked about THHN, Romex. Now what about plastics? So the plastics are a little bit of a different ballgame if you're chopping plastics. And what you're gonna wanna make sure is, what is that plastic going into? So what is the consumer on the other end using? If they're taking those plastic pellets just the way that you're granulating them, and they're putting them directly into a product, or are they turning it into a pellet first and then making that pellet to go into the product? So that really is gonna depend. And also, the smaller you go, the more dust you're making. So you might want a deduster after the granulator. So if you're doing plastics, you're gonna go from the granulator into probably a deduster, and then, with the cyclone, and then separate. And then we do have a video where we do drums, 55-gallon drums that are plastic. So what we do with this here is, and you'll see in that video that there's some really light plastic there. So the guys that are melting the plastic, they don't want to see that light plastic mixed in with the granules. So you either screen or dedust and whatnot. But if you use a very small screen in the granulator, you're going to make way more plastic dust, and that's something that you don't want when you're granulating plastic. So the goal is to go as big as you possibly can go for the consumer or for the product that it's going back into. So the same that goes for plastic is generally applied to most materials. So we've sold this equipment into people that are doing clothes, so textile, if you're doing pharmaceutical, if you're doing food grade material. We did hemp before, right? So the same applies to that. What's the goal, right? So for example, hemp, they're trying to get fibers. So going smaller, you get more fibers. So there's a couple different ways that you can skin this cat, but really the same applies to the same that applies to plastic applies to almost everything else. The only exceptions are with copper, where you're trying to separate the two items together or from each other. And anything really where you do have that, where you're trying to separate one thing from another, that's where the screen size really matters, because you don't want to go too big and have it not separated, but also you don't want to go too small and just pulverize everything to dust. So hope this helps. We'll catch you in the next one. Happy Friday. Hey guys, so if you want to reach out to me at any time, the number's in the description in all of our videos. Feel free to reach out. I'm accessible, I'm available. That's what I do. I spend a lot of my time discussing projects with our customers and people that found us on YouTube. So don't be afraid to do that. Reach out to me. My number's there. If it's a project that's ongoing, something in the future that you're trying to find a solution for, something that you're not ready to do right away, but that you want to get more information, that's what we're here for. Love discussing that stuff and talking shop. So reach out. I'll see you then. And that's what you use for plastics. All right, you're gonna have some bloopers on this one.
That's fine.
What else do people use granulators for?